Human Resources Employees. What are your best HR nightmare stories? I had one employee submit a form to increase her own salary. She also forged her manager's signature. Like, for real? Came into work early for a morning shift, work in an industrial lab. Heard noises from the back corner of the office portion of the building but can't make out what they are because of distortion. Head that way to see what was going on as I was the only one there, so I thought, at 3 a.m. See my lab manager ducking the district manager, her boss, while the HR rep for the district is sitting there, enjoying the view. I noped and went to the lab and tried to forget what happened. Saw a guy blatantly lie in his recruitment form. Watching him fill it out in front of me. It was total bollocks. Apparently he was 15th in line to the throne. Went to Eton. Studied at Oxford and served in the army for 9 years after training at Sandhurst. Not bad for a 21-year-old. Who had in fact spent 3 years in a young offenders institute. Battling a drug problem. I work in recruitment, so not exactly HR. A guy had applied for a job that required a DBS check, police check. He filled the DBS and all his other checks flew through. The DBS came back as he had committed a crime in the past. Now on our end only the guy who will be applicant's manager and a senior in our department can see the DBS result. He called the department unhappy the job had been withdrawn. He then sent a long email in begging for another chance. He said when he was 17 he beat 2 women up then threatened the cops with a gun. We're in the UK so guns are pretty rare, especially in the 1970s. He went into detail about the attempted rape. This dude wanted a job in a hospital. It's a no, mate. I was sitting in the HR office with one of the members of HR. I was waiting on her to finish a form so that we could go eat lunch. Suddenly, this guy comes in. He was a young temp employee and had only been there a week or so, and says he has something he needs to talk about. I start to get up to leave when he blurts out that he doesn't like that fact that there are so many gays and lesbians working in the company. Once he says that, I sit right back down. The HR employee asks him to clarify and he goes on about how his trainer was gay and his team lead is gay and his manager is a lesbian. All true, and he doesn't feel comfortable working around all these gays and lesbians. The HR employee asks him if anyone has ever sexually harassed him, which he says they haven't. She then says, so you want me to fire these employees? Strictly based on their sexual orientation? Just so you don't feel uncomfortable? He says yes. After which she tells him to leave the office. She then calls in his manager and talks with her about it. He ends up quitting by the end of the week. My friend who worked in HR told me about her old job where the boss had drilled a hole from his office through to the ladies' changing rooms and was perv whacking it every chance he could get. They found out because someone saw the light through the hole as he took the cover off for a peek. He denied everything and they had to take a DNA sample from the carpet under the hole which confirmed it was A, him, and B, that he had indeed been whacking away. The workers had races with those motorized forklifts. One did not know that there was freshly poured concrete. Got the forklift stuck in it. Damage was greater than 100,000. Big foundation for a new storage facility. According to the union contracts, such damages are paid for by the company unless it was intentionally done. Walked into my boss's office. Told him about the situation. Okay, shade of E. Can you please return to your office for a while? Okay. As soon as I was at my desk, I heard the loudest Gottverdammte Scheiß from his office. Then my phone rang, and he told me to inform the insurance, which ended up paying less than 10k of the damage. Otherwise, the usual HR nightmare is just people not keeping their documents in order. I used to work for a company that is an HR nightmare. Several events occurred. 1. I was hired as a director of quality/regulatory, so I come in and start sprucing up documents, policy and all the essential stuff. A VP of sales doesn't take too kindly to fixing the stuff they were lying, fraud, about and tells me in front of HR, I'm going to make you so miserable that you quit this job. Still works there. 2. Another sales guy went into a coma, health issue. and the higher-ups decided that they could fire him to keep their insurance cheaper and not pay out his life insurance. Luckily, HR pointed out the potential lawsuit. After they debated the cost of the lawsuit and whether they could win, they kept him on until he passed a week later. 3. When I left, I had my own company. They decided they owned any IP I created when I was employed there. I had no contract and non-competes aren't legal in my state. 4. The C-level employees all were convicted of corruption in multiple countries and are in jail. I had a friend working a GM when HR thought it was a good idea to test everyone on the skill set needed for their department regardless of how long they were in their position. Long careers. 15. 20. 25 years were ruined because even though they worked there for a long time with a long string of great performance reviews, they didn't pass the test that measured what HR thought was required for the department. Say you're a materials expert working in a design department. You may know barely enough in the CAD system to draw a cylinder. On the other hand, given a cylinder, you can whip out all the properties that cylinder would have if it were made from aluminum, cold rolled steel, fiberglass, etc. You'd be out of your job because HR said you had to have a certain level of CAD expertise even if it wasn't relevant to your role in the design process. My favorite was the dude who would have meetings with his boss via camera. He was remote, and while they discussed his abysmal performance, he would have naked women get up from his bed and walk around. He was told this was inappropriate several times. Continued. We fired him for fraud. A separate issue that was like a Tarantino film but gives too much away here. The nightmare of an HR employee potentially causing the HR nightmare. I took a grad course meant to prep future school principals on HR stuff. One of our assignments was to ask our current principal for redacted copies of disciplinary letters they'd written to use as examples to practice writing our own. This assignment seemed sketchy from the get-go. But whatever. It's grad school and I want an A. The course was taught by the HR director who'd helped hire me and my building principal in the same school year. The principal didn't have any letters from before I started there, so just gave me a couple random ones. Somehow the professor was still surprised when I came to class knowing all the details of each write-up despite the absence of detail in the letters. The professor flipped out a little because he was worried the principal had broken some confidentiality rule. It was actually just that I happened to be friends with the two that had been written up. Teacher HR is a nightmare unto itself. Not crazy per se but dumb and annoying. The HR team here recently rebranded themselves the people team, presumably to seem more friendly. I just enjoy the implication that they are saying all the other teams in the business aren't people. We had a guy in one of our stores submit a grievance to us about how we were discriminating against him because we were giving a female 7 months pregnant colleague some extra breaks. She had a medical note confirming the reasonable adjustments needed, so she could sit down for an extra 5 minutes every so often because he was unable to get pregnant, so could not take advantage of the same extra breaks. Didn't really know where to start with that one. Manufacturing. Long story short, the company uses some pretty dangerous equipment and machines. The manufacturing floor and warehouse had started to have some safety issues. So they decided to start doing random drug tests. 60% failed, including the best friend of the owner. This same person was responsible for several of the safety issues mentioned above and was directly responsible for 2 people being injured while on the job due to negligence on his part. So what did HR do? Nothing. The owner was one of the people that failed. One place I used to work, one of the upper management guys who was in charge of the warehouse would hop on the forklifts and do donuts. He had colon cancer and was always having surgeries to remove another section of colon, so he had a colostomy bag. He would squeeze air out of his colostomy bag while he was doing donuts on the forklifts. It would waft this god-awful stench everywhere. Everyone thought it was hilarious and would immediately run outside for a smoke break until the scent dissipated. The smell was bad enough it made a coworker puke. Also had another manager there eat 10 sacks of White Castle sliders for lunch. He ate the last 10 sack on the toilet. I have no idea how he could eat with the sounds and stenches he was emitting from his other end. It sounded like someone trying to drown Donald Duck in a puddle while tooting a tuba. No one went into that bathroom for the rest of the day. I work for a general contractor's office. So many uncomfortable actions that my boss acknowledges he's doing but refuses to change. One being that he sends any of our guys that are injured on the job to get checked out and treated by his chiropractic girlfriend, who then gives him their full medical report. The company then pays her. Just a big no. We had to terminate someone after 8 days of employment for very serious misconduct issues, including sexual harassment. When I notified the employee, he started threatening me, the manager, and the entire company. He went on to send threatening emails to the VPS and other senior leadership threatening a lawsuit. His manager was concerned for her safety and the company had to hire additional security. Come to find out that the guy we terminated had recently sued his previous employer. This whole thing is still happening, so I don't have an ending to this nightmare yet. Happy Thanksgiving. Once witnessed a manager of a company try to invite kids to a casino-themed party. When he asked why, HR had to explain to him, "I didn't think it was appropriate to invite children. Since it's there's gambling and alcohol. It's in our dangerous warehouse. It's a school night. And Hooters is catering. And is that enough? Should I keep going?" One of my company's own HR reps had to be redirected into a different job, and then finally requested to resign. After the following incident, a coworker of mine is originally from Hawaii, and her son still lives there. After the ACA was passed in Congress, she went into HR to put her son under her insurance. He was still under 26 at the time, so he was newly qualified under the law. This particular HR rep told my coworker that she actually couldn't put her son on her insurance, since he didn't live in the United States.